It's a Thursday on Mets Daily. You know what that means. It's time for our weekly guest. I'm Jake Brown. Smash that thumbs up. Every thumbs up counts. 2 thumbs up. Ebert and Roper. Rate the movie 5 stars. Give us a 5-star Uber rating. At Jake Brown Radio on all social media platforms. Make sure you share the Mets Daily channel. Comment below. We have the other half of the show of Why Am I a Mets Fan Pod, and we ask ourselves that every day, Samantha CROSTON. Why are we Mets fans? But for the first time in the last year, we're kind of appreciating being Mets fans. And some of us are getting a little arrogant, a little cocky, and saying that we run New York. And it's probably too soon. But when Garrett Cole's dropping like a fly, when Giancarlo Stanton's dropping like a fly, when Dom Smith might be the Yankees opening day DH, we have some hope that we could run New York. Am I right?
Listen, I've been saying this for the past couple of weeks, but out of all of the disaster classes that have happened for the Yankees, the thing that continues to stick out in my mind is the fact that now facial hair is allowed. To me, that's the biggest crash out that franchise has seen in quite a long time. I agree with you. Probably too soon to say that the Mets run New York, but who knows what could happen by the end of the year, and it's good to at least have that feeling.
There's a Mets house NYC where we hosted Mets Daily on Friday, but I haven't heard about the Yankees house in NYC, although I think they do have a store, honestly, but nobody goes there. Anyways, Jeff McNeil might be visiting the Mets house because he'll have some extra time on his hands right now as he's headed to the injured list. And, the Mets are dropping like flies. I mean, luckily, knock on wood, this is a wooden desk, I think. These aren't season-ending crazy injuries, Samantha. These are, 3 to 4 weeks. Sean Manaea is 4 to 6 weeks, which we'll talk about him in a second. And this is 3 to 4 weeks for Jeff McNeil. And what's going on with obliques? I don't even know where an oblique really truly is on the body. We might need Bill Nye, the science guy, in here. But a strained low-grade right oblique. He will sit for 7 to 10 days. Will be out 3 to 4 weeks. I think this is good that it's happening now, Samantha, that it's not in June, July, August, September. That's the good news. It is alarming that guys are getting hurt, barely doing anything here in March. He said he felt something last night after the game. He said he barely has any symptoms. I think the Mets got to play it safe here. Here's the good thing. We get to see some youth. I think a lot of people were tired of hoping for happy Jeff. They saw a lot of angry, older, can't hit in no shift Jeff, and now they get to see some youth out there.
Yeah, I listen, I never prey on a player's downfall, and the injury bug has been really, really bad for the Mets and the Yankees this year. I think in sports in general, an injury is just not what you're rooting for. At the same time, I'd be lying if I didn't say there was a part of me that felt that this was a blessing in disguise. Because like you said, there are a couple of other players on this team who have really deserved an opportunity, perhaps it's even overdue, to sort of show what they're made of. So whether you're going with an Acuña or a Baty, and I know we'll probably get into that discussion, so I'll hold my thoughts on that. But the point is, you're going to get to see some new, youthful, and quite honestly, just different faces than the face of Jeff McNeil. And I think I can speak for most Mets fans when I say they're happy to see a change of pace there.
And listen, he's not the greatest in the clubhouse. He's not exactly beloved by that entire team. When he's happy,
one of the worst personality-wise.
Yeah, I think when he's happy, they love him. When he's hitting, they love him. But once they banned that shift, that was kind of the downfall of Jeff McNeil because he was the king of slapping the ball the other way or laying down a drag bunt when they needed to. Now with no shift and everything that's happened, older and injuries left and right, you just don't know what you're going to get out of him, which brings me to my next point, and you just mentioned it, is Brett Baty. You don't know what you're going to get out of Brett Baty. And I know your co-host is also not the biggest Brett Baty fan. I am not. I called him a 4A battery, which people commented after the show I did with Ashley that there actually is a 4A battery. I thought it didn't exist. I've never used. Have you used a 4A battery in your life for anything?
No, but I know it exists.
I thought that ended at AAA, but there is a 4A player, and that's Brett Baty. Listen, I think, Samantha, they're both making the roster now. I think that's should be a lock. Now, if Donovan Walton makes the roster or Luis De Los Santos makes the roster, I know Zach Short may smile. I know Joey Wendell may smile, and the ghost of irrelevant Mets players past may smile. But the reality is, for at least the first 2 weeks of the season until Jeff McNeil's back, we need to see both these guys on the roster. And it might be a small sample size. You may call it unfair, but I think these 2 weeks, if Brett Baty makes it, could make or break his Mets future. I think it's probably going to be What I would do is probably Acuña versus lefties, Baty versus righties, have Acuña be a pinch runner late, have Acuña be a pinch hitter late if they're bringing a lefty, and have Acuña be a defensive replacement late. But I lean towards wanting to see Acuña every day. I just feel like they're going to want to Salt Bay sprinkle a little Brett Baty in there.
I'm not mad at that, and I'm going to explain why. But I think first, because it's funny, Ashley had told me about your guys' discussion with Baty, and I know people have such a wide range of feelings about him, right? Because this is somebody who, quite honestly, obviously us being in Syracuse, having the Syracuse Mets in our backyard, we're seeing Brett Baty the Great. We're seeing Brett Baty who is smashing balls over.
He's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer.
Right. Totally seems like a guy who should be playing in the major leagues. Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, obviously just reversing, last year, he goes out there and for all intents and purposes, he sort of flops. I also, though, would go out on a limb and say that he was a little bit unlucky, if you think about it, in the sense that, obviously there's a lot of pressure, but if you kind of remember, I feel like he was sort of there and sort of squarely in the lineup right around or up until the time where, Jorge Lopez is throwing his glove in the air and the Mets are, at the most bottom point of the entire season. Then, for all intents and purposes, he gets Wally pipped by his best friend. Now he's here again. It wasn't exactly a great situation for him. And I'm happy to see that now he might be getting a second chance. On the one hand, right, I feel like in a way maybe he's earned it. And I really think that what the decision comes down to here for Acuña versus Baty would be offense versus defense. What do you prioritize more? That's why I think I'm inclined to agree with you that Acuña to start could be the right way to go. This is a lineup that is so offense heavy and you have some great hitters right at the top of the lineup. End of the day, I think that Brett Baty has the potential to be a better hitter, I think, than Acuña. But there's no denying the fact, even today, you see some of the clips coming out on social media, no denying the fact that Acuña would be a better second baseman.
Baty looked terrible out there. I mean, they said, look at the range, and then he threw the ball like 4 feet wide of Pete Alonso. I'm scared to see him at second. When you salivate a little bit at the thought of Lindor at short, Lindor at second, and then the combination of Siri and Taylor, you're talking about elite defense up the middle. And let's be serious. David Stern's a defensive-minded GM. He's a guy who likes his elite defenders. So to me, to makeshift Brett Baty, it worked with Daniel Murphy because Daniel Murphy was a remarkable hitter. Brett Baty, this is his fourth chance, and you can argue the sample size is too small with him, but he did play 108 games and had 353 at-bats in 2023. It's not like he hasn't got his chances to succeed. I think it might be his final 2 weeks to succeed, and you got to figure the Mets are thinking to themselves, hey, we got to put him out there for a chance to trade him because his value isn't that high right now. If he has 2 good weeks and he could get us a starting pitcher or a reliever or someone that we need, it could be a good look versus just seeing him mash balls in Syracuse.
It's funny. It's like, it's a shame because I just can't get this thought out of my mind that the second the Mets trade him is the second he becomes a star. And I truly do feel like he's one of those players that has star potential. But having star potential doesn't pay the bills, right? We need to see the proof. And we have not seen that at the level where it really counts. Until we do, I'm inclined to agree with you. I'd probably go Acuña at least to start.
Listen, I have star potential, and I struggle to pay the bills, so it's tough. Like it's really tough if you got star potential. And I think he's a good kid. I don't want to say things bad about him. I just think Acuña, like the defense, the stolen bases. Like when you talk about this lineup, Soto doesn't steal a lot. Nimmo with plantar fasciitis is not going to steal a lot. Mark Vientos is like the slowest man on the planet, which I still struggle to understand considering he's not fat. I just don't understand what's wrong with his body and why he's so goddamn slow. Luis Torrens ain't stealing. He's a little pudgy. Siri steals, Lindor steals, and that's about it in this lineup. So you talk about a third guy that can steal. That's Luisangel Acuña. And if he's in the 9 hole, Lindor's in the 1 hole, you got back-to-back. You got 9-1-1. There's an emergency, and guys are stealing bases in that Mets lineup. And I just think what he adds, regardless of his AAA, his stats in Syracuse weren't good. I always say, he feels like the kind of player that steps up in the big moments. And I don't think you should overlook what he did in September. Those were big playoff push baseball games, and he had the ability to hit home runs. He played good defense. He stepped in for the face of the Mets franchise in a serviceable way, and I don't know. I think they're going to platoon with Acuña getting, a lot more of the playing time, but, I'm very curious to see how this plays out.
Me too, because to your point, like the only thing I'll add on, I totally agree. I feel like last year he was sort of that player that, towards the end of the season, fans are falling in love with. It was like, how could you not, right? He's young, he's youthful, and to your point, just very agile, like just seems like he could fit right in. But more than any of that, he was coming in at a time where the stakes were extremely high and he was valuable and he added something. That is where with Brett Baty, you just don't know if you're feeling it. And if in the biggest of big moments, would he really be capable of stepping up and playing to his highest potential? Honestly, out there today, I was watching some of those clips that came out. I don't even know how else to say it. He looked like a giraffe to me. Like he just looked like he didn't have control over his own body or something. You know what I mean? I was disappointed and I honestly feel sorry for him because like I said, I really do. I think he has a lot of potential, but that's just not enough.
Yeah, and if I want to see a giraffe, I'll go to the Bronx Zoo. I don't need to go
Right.
to City Field. We go to the
Great
Bronx.
zoos in New York City.
It's a great zoo. I remember my field trips there. I have
Sure.
some horror stories from there when my mom was chaperone, but I won't get into that on this program. But I will get into Sean Manaea, our Samoan prince, resuming throwing. Love Sean Manaea. In my opinion, I wanted him back more than Pete Alonso. I've said it over and over. I was fine with them moving on from Pete. They bring him back. I think it's good. Short-term deal. You could still potentially go internal or go for Vladdy next winter. But Sean Manaea, back, gets hurt, but now he's throwing again. Threw a little game. I was game of catch. I'm like thinking of like me and my pops outside like throwing, and that's not that serious. But it does feel like mid to at the latest, if no setbacks, late April, we could get the ace back on the hill, and that's huge for the Mets because you never know with these oblique injuries. We don't know with Jeff McNeil. He says he's fine now. So one guy could wake up in a week and he feels like crap. So I think it's good sign to see Manaea throwing. Now he could begin his spring training part 2. And by the mid to late April, they can have him back, which means we don't have to worry about maybe seeing too much Blackburn or seeing a ton of Griffin Canning, although Griffin Canning has looked good so far this spring, or having to go to Jose Urena. So that's a good sign that Sean Manaea is thrown again.
I really had sort of this arc of how I felt about, the Mets starting rotation. And I have really been through the 5 stages of grief with it. But honestly, now I am circling around to acceptance. I'm not going to lie to you. There was a time when I was finding out about Manaea and he was hurt, I was thinking, is this rotation deep enough? What should the Mets do? But I have come to find and believe that the leadership for the Mets right now and the decision makers don't like to jump the gun. They're not believers in making rash decisions. They want to see how things play out. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not really the most patient person. I'm a little impatient. Can't take the Long Island out of the girl.
We're from
But
New York. We got to be impatient. It's in our
I'm from
DNA.
New York. It's in my blood. But honestly, now I've come around, and I feel like now you're almost seeing, or maybe even getting rewarded for, taking a minute, taking a breath, and just seeing how things play out. Because if he really is ahead of schedule, and there's not a whole lot of time that he misses, again, I know people have different opinions about this. If you're a Mets fan, but I'm okay with the idea of them not having one true ace. Who gives an F if you have a couple really great guys? Good enough for me as long as they're all performing.
Baseball's not about 5 aces and having these top flight names because, listen, they go down like flies. Look at Garrett Cole. The Yankees, Marcus Stroman is somewhere smiling because now he gets to be in the rotation, doesn't need to get traded, and he's like the Yankees' number 3 or 4 starter, and he's a selfish SOB. And now he gets his chance to get his contract next year. So it's not about having all those aces. Despite how impatient we are, I think this rotation will be good. And listen, David Stearns will add if he needs to add. If Dylan Cease at the trade deadline is still out there and available and the Padres say, hey, we want to move on, I think they'll make a move. They'll do what they need to improve the roster. She is Samantha Croston at Sam Croston1. She is the sports director at CNY Central. She co-hosts the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. Subscribe to that on their YouTube with Ashley Wenskowski. She also hosts the Oz, not to do with the Wizard of Oz, the Orange Zone podcast about Syracuse sports as well. So make sure you check her out. Give her a follow. She does a great job. And another guy coming back here is Daniel Nunez. I don't think we should sleep on Daniel Nunez because what a revelation, Samantha, he was out of the bullpen last year. And why I'm excited about the Mets and people worry about the rotation and stuff, I think this bullpen is so deep. when there's guys who are not going to make this team, like a Tyler Zuber or maybe a Genesis Cabrera, that the Mets are going to, or Sean Reed Foley, that the Mets are going to have waiting in the wings in AAA, where if you have one guy, two guys, three guys go down, they have depth. And I've always said this about David Stearns. He addresses roster spots 27 through 40 better than any front office guy in this sport. And Mets roster spots 27 through 40 are set. Like, even when you think about the Joey Meneses of the world that the Mets will have in AAA stored if there's an injury, you have Acuña, you have Mauricio in the wings. We didn't even mention him earlier because he needs to get game action. 27 through 40 on this roster are what excite me, because you never know when you'll get Candelita Part 2. They might not write the #1 Latin song on the charts, but they might have a guy that comes up here and fills that void without having to write a song.
Hey, if they're hitting some homers but they aren't a good singer, it's good enough for me. No, I actually think that's really well said. I feel like David Stearns, as we know, is that sort of guy. He's a if you find enough spare parts, you can put together a truck kind of dude. And honestly, in David Stearns, I trust. Until he gives me a reason not to, I feel really comfortable with a lot of the decisions that he's made. To your point about Nunez and the bullpen, one thing about me, I'm a big analogy girl. I don't know how many lacrosse fans are crossing over with baseball, but that was my sport growing up. And I really feel like I would almost put the bullpen, I think it's comparable to like the face-off unit in lacrosse. It's like a make or break aspect of a team. And if you have a really good face-off unit and you're winning a lot of face-offs, then you're winning a lot of games. I think you said don't sleep on Nunez. I think people should just not sleep on the bullpen in general and the importance of that. You know that you have Diaz, but you need some guys to get through some of those innings, 6th inning, 7th inning, 8th inning. And I think that Nunez could sincerely be a really big part of that. And he's somebody who last year I felt, from 100% confidence scale, I'd give it like an 85. Like, I really thought he did a good job.
Yeah, and when you think about these starters, if Blackburn's only giving you 4 or 5, or Griffin Canning going 4 and 5, that's when Nunez and Budo fill the spot, when they get you through the 6th, 7th, and bridge the door to Minter and to Diaz. So I'm excited about this bullpen. I'm excited about this team. The Mets get to see some youth now. We don't wish injuries, but I think this is going to be a nice little 2-week sample size. When you look at the schedule, I think, the Mets wait on McNeil. They let it go the 4 weeks, and my guess would be he's back around April 14th in Minnesota. Maybe they wait till April 17th to get the Cardinals. Take your time with him, and we'll say, Baty and Acuña, this is your shot. Please no Donovan Walton. I'd rather Donovan Mitchell. Please no fringe players making this roster. I want to see the best. I want to see the youth. And they'll get their chance to play. I think fans worry they won't get reps. They won't get reps. Well, for 2 weeks, if they don't get reps, they got a whole minor league season to get those reps. What's your win projection since we have you on before the season? Do you have a number? I think I'm around the 92 win range if everything pans out right. Do you have a win projection for the Mets?
Wow. You're around the 92 range. I'll go a little more optimistic than that, which is not always my style. And I'll say this is an 100-win season.
Wow, 100 wins. Let's go. I'll take 100.
I'll see. Listen, I'll eat my hat if I'm wrong, but I may as well go positive now while I still feel positive.
100. I think this is one of the things that come like out of the Subway machine. I think this is $1. Maybe
he gets it.
$2. 100. 100. I love the number 100. And we love having Samantha CROSTON on. We're going to have both of you on together, you and Ashley of Why Am I Mets Fan Pod. If we could fit it in the screen, I don't know, you may have to be conjoined twins and just attached at the head to make it happen. But we're
in local news. We'll work it out.
Yeah, no, listen, you guys do a fantastic job. Love your show, and we loved having you on. And let's go Mets. We're 2 weeks away today, Samantha. In 2 weeks, at this moment, as we speak, at 4:14 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will be watching the Mets in Houston against the Astros. And I assume Kodai Senga, unless Clay Holmes is the opening day starter. And then 3 weeks, 22 days at Citi Field against the Toronto Blue Jays. It's going to be beautiful.
I love how you're so excited. You're running out of breath by the end of the sentence. Hey, Clay Holmes is a dog. He's someone who I'm looking forward to. Last note I'll say, one person's end is somebody else's beginning. If this is Brett Baty's last shot, you better make it count, man.
Thanks for the memories, sweet Prince Brett Baty. And thanks to Samantha CROSTON. Thanks for coming on Mets Daily.
Thanks for having me.
Subscribe, smash that thumbs up, comment below, And thanks for watching Mets Daily. We'll talk to you tomorrow on a happy Friday, 2 weeks from real Mets baseball.